Hey everybody, it's Jazz. So today I'm actually wanting to do this for the first video of the year. I really wanted to talk about the purpose of pretty much every language I've ever learned and why. I believe it's a driving force for just continued learning, because most of the time it's that when we learn a language, it's sometimes hard to stick with it. But when you have a clear purpose, it really drives you to continue. First language that I know is English. I really don't need to explain that. That is my native language. I have been speaking that since birth. And it's been relevant in a lot of different ways. French. As many of you, if you've been a subscriber for a while, you know my story about how when I was younger, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I went to fashion school, later on studied abroad in Paris, and I felt like I'm going to be a designer when I grow up. I need to know French, and that's all the foreign languages I need to know. And that kind of was a driving force as to my continued studies, despite the fact that I was taking French in school, but it was just my drive and my passion at the time to really be able to drive me forward to a higher and more advanced level. And then later on, I learned Spanish. So with going into fashion school, I had learned French, and which made it easier when I transitioned to Spanish. I was learning Spanish and German at the same time. When I learned Spanish, it was because I was living in Los Angeles. I mean, you could throw a stone and hit somebody who spoke Spanish. My church back in California, they originally started doing services in Spanish, and I had friends who were Hispanic. They were going, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I was like, well, I might as well just learn the language. But they started doing that as a regular thing. It was like a once a month thing, and I was like, I really want to understand the sermon, because I remember the pastor at the time, he was preaching in Spanish, and I remember I didn't understand anything but words from Dora the Explorer. He just started getting emotional, and people just started like being very emotionally responsive to him. And I was like, I just hate, I don't know what he's talking about. I really do. I'm like, I understand the emotion that's going on, but I don't know what it is about. And that was like, that's it. I'm learning Spanish after that. And it was a bit of an easier process because Spanish and French have the same root. So it was easier for me to pick up what they were trying to say, like certain words. And then later on, it just kind of like sentences, the grammatical structure was similar. So that just really helped me out so I could learn faster. It's like, it's easier to learn a third language than it is to learn a second. German, again, I was learning simultaneously, but that came later on because, actually, no, that came earlier on. I was like, I'm going to learn German, and then, of course, Spanish kind of took priority. But I was alternating between weeks. Like, this week I'm going to focus on Spanish, this week I'm going to work on German. And I was doing, like alternating days, but then I didn't like that because that would confuse me because I was waking up the next day, and I was like, oh, now I have to use another language. So I did alternate it week to week. The German, I learned that because I had a friend of mine who, at my church in California, he was from Germany. And this is for me, I really love challenges. So he told me that German was really difficult because he said, that's really cool that you're trying to learn Spanish because my language is German and it's generally difficult. And so my brain was like, challenge accepted. For me, it was like, okay, this language is hard. Let me see how difficult it is. Because I was really curious about how people could understand that. Because when I first started looking at German, I was like, this just looks like a bunch of typos on a screen. Eventually, like, it's the same alphabet, and then you kind of learn that. I learned that it's very similar to English. So just the grammatical structure is different, but the general pronunciation, there were words I could hear and I'm like, oh, that sounds like this word in English, but if I saw it written on a piece of paper, I would not have recognized it. And so I still to this day speak German. I mean, I lived in Germany as an au pair. I was seeing someone who was German for a period of time, which did improve my German drastically. I have a family friend who lives in Dormagen, so I had more uses for that to continue learning. And now I'm also a German teacher. I have private students that I teach German to. So that has come in kind of like my continued use. I didn't really expect to continue learning that. It was more of I'm curious as to what this language is. And then later on, it just kind of found its use. The following year, I said, if I can learn 2 languages simultaneously, I'm going to learn 3. I'm crazy. So I learned Italian, Portuguese, and Dutch. I would alternate the same system, alternating 1 week Italian, 1 week Portuguese, 1 week Dutch. And it's interesting because like when you learn new languages over and over again, you kind of know what kinds of sources to pull from. Italian, that was just more of, I just wanted to learn it out of curiosity. I eventually had a roommate later on after college. She was from Italy. She's from maybe 20 minutes away from Venice. So she lived in the north. I had a reason to speak it. I said, oh, you're Italian. I actually was learning Italian for a little bit, but now I have a reason to really pull it out of the closet. She and I got to spend some time together because I was trying to learn her language, and it was just a lot better for her to know that someone can speak her language or can at least try and attempt to. So she was a really big help in that arena. Portuguese, I had some Brazilian friends. I chose Portuguese because, again, I really just from the Spanish language and then going into Portuguese, I felt like it would be a little bit easier. I started seeing patterns. I said, I think I can learn Portuguese. I would listen to it and I'm like, I can generally get the sense of what they're trying to say, but it was so easy to start reading right away. Italian and Portuguese, I was like, I can read this. I can understand what I'm reading. It's all in the same family. I didn't really practice my Brazilian Portuguese very much. I still to this day am more receptive. Like I understand it better than I can speak it. I feel like if I really had some practice, I could formulate some sentences. Like I still know how to say something. I know how to say my name. I can read it really well. I can hear it. I would know Portuguese if I heard it. I still have researched the differences between European and Brazilian Portuguese because that is an important distinction given the fact that European Portuguese is where it came from originally. Dutch, I had a neighbor who was from the Netherlands. So I got to practice a little bit back and forth with him. I really just kind of dropped off of Dutch for a while. I am, again, more receptive because I know that through YouTube, I have actually been able to use it a lot more, to hear it and like to practice speaking and things like that. Because there's a YouTube channel that I love and it's called Dutchies to Be. I actually have it listed on my website as a resource, but she teaches Dutch in Dutch. I would, after a period of time, it's like I kind of understand what she's saying. It's very similar to German, but not exactly. There's a lot of false cognates between German and Dutch. I got this idea to learn Catalan. The reason why I learned Catalan was because, not that I was trying to be fluent, it was more, I just want to know how to recognize it when I see it. Because I knew Spanish at that point to a proficient level. And now it's like, well, there's different languages within Spain. This is why I tell people that geography is so important to learn. Because to an outsider, you're like, yeah, I'm a Spaniard. But then when you go into Spain and you ask them where they're from, they're like, oh, I'm Galician, I'm Catalonian. So though there's individual language, like minority languages within that country. And I said, well, I just want to at least learn Catalan because I keep hearing that. I keep seeing it on the news. Like when I watch international programs, I just wanted to recognize it. And to me, that just came off as, it was like Spanish and then a little bit of Portuguese and some Latin. Like it just looked like a mesh of several European languages that I already knew. So again, reading was not difficult. With listening, you just still had to pay attention, but there were still things where I could hear Catalan. I'm like, oh, I think I understood what they were saying, like the gist of it. I would not be able to tell you I could have a conversation in Catalan. It was more of just out of curiosity to know how the language works and to be able to recognize it. And so that way I'm not like I actually had come into contact with someone who is from the Catalonia area, and she was saying to me, she's like, you learned Catalan? I was like, yeah, I just learned it because I was curious. I can't really do a whole lot with it on a active, because language learning is passive and active. I can listen and read, but I would not be able to write and speak without assistance. So it's like I've learned it, but I've kind of partially learned it, if that makes sense. So it's still relevant. To me, I think it's relevant because you never know who you might encounter. And they're like, oh, you know that? So I try to make sure people know that I'm not an ignorant American. Like, I know that that's a stereotype that's been presented, but for me, I don't want that to be what people assume that I am. Like, yeah, I know things. I do my research. And then the next thing that I learned was Frisian. Every time I tell people that I learned Frisian, they're like, what is that? And so just to reiterate, Frisian is the second official language in the Netherlands. It's spoken in the western part of the Netherlands, in a place called Friesland. And it's basically a combination of Dutch and German. In German, you would say, like, to say I am would be ich bin. In Dutch, it's ik ben. And literally, Frisian is ik bin. And I was like, it's just a combination of two. Like when I learned numbers, I was like, that's not different from Dutch. And I actually remember hearing it. I was watching some YouTube videos on it, and I was like, I can kind of understand what you're trying to say. Because it's like from Frisian through Dutch to German through English, it kind of all just made sense to me. Again, that was a language that was learned out of curiosity. I was taking an online course on FutureLearn, as I was taking an introduction to Dutch course because I wanted to get a refresher because it's been a while. It had been a while since I last learned it, so I wanted to get a refresher. The course was produced by the University of Groningen, I believe, and at the end of the course, they had a suggestion for other online courses you could take with that same university, and it was Introduction to Frisian. I was like, what is that? And then when I looked in the course description, it said it was the second official language in the Netherlands. It's a language that is not commonly spoken, but it is spoken. My Dutch friend told me, he said, yeah, that language, like nobody speaks it. It's not even worth learning. And I was like, well, I just want to know because you never know. You really never know. Again, this is my linguist brain. I love these things. I love the aspect of learning about it's like, I just get curious and I just am like, I need to learn this. Like I just learn, I think it's kind of like a researcher's mind where you're like, I have a question about that. Now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Afterwards, I decided I was going to pick up Arabic. I had learned it for a little bit, then stopped because I was like, this is difficult. And when I say difficult, like I said, I like challenges. So I later on came back to it. I'm kind of dropped off a little bit and I'm still coming back to it. Like I know how to sound out words, even though I don't exactly know what I read. It is a language that is completely different from what I know because it's not based on vocabulary that I already know. No, I mean, in certain dialects, yes, because I think like Moroccan Arabic and Tunisian Arabic, they have some French influence during that period of colonization. But the other dialects, I have no idea. Like there's no basis. For me, like when it comes to learning, hello, like it was easy to kind of learn what that was in all these other languages, but I don't know where the word stops, where it ends. It's written in cursive. The only saving grace is that it is a phonetic language, despite the fact that the alphabet is different. It's like playing crack the code. Okay, like this one letter is Aleph. Okay, that's like an A sound. I can deal with that. And going down the alphabet. And then from there it was learning the structure, and they don't use like the verb to be. So if I were to say my name is, I would not say I am so-and-so or I am Jazz. I would say Anna Jazz, like I Jazz. So I'm like, okay. And I know that there's other languages like that because I one time attempted to learn Ukrainian and it's the same thing. They don't have the verb to be in the middle. So it's like I teacher, like I'm a teacher. It was very different and I'm terrified to learn an Asian language. I looked into Korean for a little bit because I had a friend of mine who wanted some resources on learning Korean because I know where to look and where to find these resources. I remember watching some YouTube videos and I just thought I see the structure, I see what they're doing, but I'm like, I don't know if I have the willpower to stick with it. Not that I couldn't, because I have stuck with many languages. I mean, I can survive in the first 5 languages that I know without any assistance or need a need of another language to interfere. Those are the languages that I've learned, and with all of them, I've had a purpose for them at the time that I started learning them. Many of them are more useful now. It's not that for me, I could go back to learning Dutch if I really wanted to, and it's not that I just kind of fell out of it. If I were to listen to Dutch or if I were to talk to someone, a lot of that would come back. It's just that I haven't had a need for it, so it's just kind of stored away in the back of my brain. But I've noticed that a lot, that even when you stop learning a language for a period of time and you come back to it, you don't really forget it. It's just you just have to do a little bit of a review. Like even with my students, like there might be like through the holidays, we might come back after 2 weeks and like let's do a refresher of what we went over last time, and then we're gonna add some new things. So a lot of times you don't really forget, you just need to jog your memory a little bit. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.